Welcome to the Cybersecurity Connection, where we bring you, the viewer, a new nightly cybersecurity recruiter. If you have any questions, please comment during this episode, and we will address the comments throughout the episode and at the end. We will answer questions at the end. If you look below this video feed, you will see the links to hit my guest's LinkedIn account and also the job board that we will be reviewing. So if you click on the job board, you can actually pull up the jobs that we are reviewing as we're discussing different topics. So with that, my guest host is Sean Keene with AT&T.
Great. Thank you, Justin, and thanks everyone who's joined this session today. It's really a great opportunity. I appreciate this connection that you've created, Justin, for hiring managers to connect with candidates of interest for cyber-related jobs. AT&T has been around supporting the nation and businesses in the U.S. for over 140 years. However, I don't think everybody necessarily thinks about cyber. When they think about AT&T, it's more mobility and other things. But in fact, there are a lot of cyber-related positions that AT&T has available, not only to support the corporate efforts, but primarily from my focus areas on the defense segment, as well as other federal customers. So you'll see a number of opportunities out there, and if you search on our jobs page that I think Justin is sharing with you, we have everything that ranges from what you might consider normal cyber job, like a cyber security analyst, all the way to things that are a little bit more extreme in terms of the cyber work, which be things like systems engineers, test engineers. And while it doesn't have cyber in the title, I can assure you that the focus of those efforts for those positions is going to be on cyber and mostly in defense of the nation related cyber work. So we have lots of jobs out there, lots that change every day. You'll see that we post pretty much in real time as opportunities become available. So if you come one day to the site, you wouldn't be wasting your time to come back a day or two later, because you'll probably see some additional opportunities. As I was speaking with Justin prior to this session, one of the things I might recommend to you is when you go to the site, you can search on a lot of different terms. If you just search on cyber, you'll probably get tons of results. But if you search on, if you're interested in government, if you search on government in particular, you'll get kind of a smaller subset of those jobs. But like I said, we have everything that's available today, with immediate openings from cyber analyst all the way to other things related to policy, engineering, testing, and various opportunities and disciplines there. We also have opportunities that kind of span the globe, not only the corporate side and the defense side. In particular, with my portfolio, we have positions all the way from Germany to Hawaii. While there are no current openings in Germany or Hawaii right now, give us a month and you'll probably see some pop up. But in between and mostly in the continental United States, if you're interested in those areas, we have everything from the East Coast to the West Coast. We actually have some employees today. They're down in North Carolina who are kind of trying to bunker based on what's coming with Hurricane Florence. So we've got people all over the country, and so depending on where you want to be and where you're at currently located, we probably have some opportunity for you there. So again, I appreciate the opportunity, and I certainly welcome questions. And so a couple of tips that I might offer to you. One, in relation to resumes, which I kind of believe also is a little bit true on the LinkedIn profile, but specifically to resumes. One of the things that we're kind of constantly doing is finding resumes on job boards that you might post with a company that hosts those things. But we're doing some keyword searches. There's really kind of four in particular that are a focus area for us. One is a degree Not every position requires a degree, but when it does, that's one of the first things we're looking at. It's sometimes you can get a waiver for experience in lieu of a degree, but generally the recruiting team that supports me, they're looking for degrees first if it's required. Second thing, usually a DoD 8570 certification. That would kind of ranges from like Security Plus to CISSP. So that's kind of the next thing they're looking for. The third thing is, experience. They're trying to figure out number of years of experience because a lot of positions, require a certain minimum number of years of experience. And then, of course, with the government jobs, there's security clearance requirements. Again, not every cyber position that's available on our job board requires a security clearance, but for the ones that I'm a hiring manager for, all of them do require a clearance of some sort. But I don't want you to be discouraged. There are plenty of other opportunities with AT&T that do not require a clearance doing cyber work. But for those are kind of like the key word searches that our recruiters are doing. And generally, when they get over 50% success rate on those four things, I usually get a resume. And clearance sometimes is a distinguishing factor, but sometimes it's not. Usually that kind of comes out maybe in an interview because not everybody puts it on their resume, which is understandable. So that's some tips for the resume. And again, I certainly want to take some questions. In terms of LinkedIn, I think there's three things that I'm interested in if a recruiter refers me to a LinkedIn account. Obviously, we're looking for some cybersecurity experience if it's obviously a cybersecurity related position. And we're also looking to see who that person knows that does, the cyber business, if you will, who they're connected with. That usually kind of demonstrates, their interest in that field. And then the other thing we're also looking for is, what they're following. What things of interest do they read up on LinkedIn, and there's a lot of different cyber posts that are out there, but just as long as they're kind of following that, obviously demonstrating interest, those are things that kind of tip me off that they might this might be a good candidate to interview. So with that, I certainly welcome questions. Justin, what else can I cover to help your audience?
So yeah, let's talk a few little topics real quick. I do have a few questions coming in. I'm going to let the stream keep on building up. I have more and more viewers coming in as they get those notifications. They can jump in for the stream. One question I'd probably have is you touched base on this whole like keyword search. Like, so as a professional, let's say I'm trying to just start out in the cybersecurity sector. What keywords are you kind of looking at on my profile as like maybe a junior analyst or something like that that's going to distinguish me whenever you are searching for people on LinkedIn?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of words. One is any kind of certification. So the recruiters usually will type in certification, they'll type in 8570, they'll type in Security Plus, CISSP, CASP. Basically all of, CompTIA. The more descriptive you can be of that cert, if you have one, I would say is probably good. A lot of people will put Sec Plus, and usually they catch that, but it definitely doesn't hurt to put, CompTIA, Security Plus, or CompTIA, CYSA Plus. Those are kind of things that it's kind of like you'll make sure you get caught there, which is what you want to get caught, right? In this phishing expedition by our recruiters. So as much as you can, spelling out the certification and maybe even abbreviating it in a parentheses, that kind of will help. So in other words, CompTIA Security Plus, something, and then Sec Plus in parentheses. While it might look strange in terms of what somebody might print out, if it's what you have online, you'll usually get grabbed. If you have a degree, it's good to put the word degree in there. It's good to put the word bachelor in there as it refers to a degree. It's always also good if you have, Bachelor of Science, to put Bachelor of Science as opposed to B period S period. Usually the recruiters are putting B period S period, but it's just I think for my purposes as I do searches, Bachelor of Science really helps if that's something that you have. And then if in your experience, it's always good to put the title. If you have if you've been a cyber analyst, to put cyber analyst or cybersecurity analyst, and make sure that's prominently recorded there. I think if you have a clearance and you're willing to identify that, it certainly doesn't hurt to put security, the words security clearance in there. If you don't want to necessarily put what clearance that is, just the fact that you have one, that'll catch the word searches. And then if you one thing that tends to work pretty well for a lot of our candidates that we reach out to the quickest is if they have a little bit of a summary statement toward the top of the first page of their resume, or kind of toward the top of their LinkedIn profile that says whatever their discipline is, 10 years of experience or 5 years or whatever, kind of rolling it up. That summary makes it helpful for us hiring managers, because a lot of times we're looking at 4 criteria, and number of years of experience usually is a math problem that we have to do as we're looking through people's resumes. If somebody kind of summarizes that in a bullet format or paragraph toward the top, that certainly helps.
Exactly, and I think that's a key point. A few episodes ago, I tried highlighting that same issue. Is there might be that one keyword that you're not getting picked up on, so maybe having it 2 or 3 places, like on the actual profile, and then in like your certification body, things like that. So actually, like you said, spelling it out, it's all about that keyword search engine being used by that given recruiter that may populate you or not populate you. In the same way with resumes, some people hear that whole black hole or the whole that doesn't get picked up by actual human eyes, things like that. So I think that's another key term there is when you look at those jobs and positions, you have to actually say, hey, this is what they're looking for. Does my resume even come close to saying that? And tweak it to say it if you do qualify or feel like you're qualified for. So there might be some keywords in the job posting that just your resume won't pick up on. Do you see that a lot?
Yeah, I think just so everybody knows, like we do. There is some machine effort to this, but in fact, when it comes to my review, it's always my eyes on it. So I'm doing keyword searches when I'm trying to figure out the math of number of years if somebody hasn't summarized it for me. But otherwise, I always recommend 4 key things on the top of the front page of your resume if you have them. A degree if you have it, and kind of spelled out pretty well, including the school and when it was completed. A lot of people will use the trick of they'll put Bachelor of Science degree, and when we interview them, they say they're pursuing it. And so I would recommend that if you're pursuing it, it would be helpful if you basically state that. That does help us get to the right, because sometimes if people are pursuing it, that gives them some other opportunities. But and then the certification, if you have 1 or 2 or more of those, I put that right up front. Summarizing the number of years of experience in a certain discipline is helpful. And then if you have a clearance, and if those are in the top half of the front of the first page, I think for me, I'll pick it up a lot quicker, and I'll basically be sending you an email asking for an interview. So if all 4 of those things are a match, and again, like I said, not every position requires all 4 of those. And some of these require differing degrees of intensity for those. So I don't want to discourage anybody, but generally that's what we're focused on. So when you think about your resume, if you fold it in half, from top to bottom, if you're not covering those kind of 4 key things in the first the top half, some recruiters might overlook you. I mean, they're doing a lot with machines, so some of that will get picked up. But just a tip that if you got it in the top half, you'll definitely catch my attention.
So a statement I want to make real quick to everyone that is viewing and will be viewing in the future is his link is below. He is open to the connection. Connect with him. If you see something that you feel that you're very strong in, reach out to him. He'll do it. He'll take a quick glance. He'll take a look at it and see where that fits in. So do know that so in the future do reach out to him. So right now I'm going to kick it over. Did you have any more comments before I kick it over to the questions?
Just one other comment, and I look at LinkedIn profiles, but I have to admit that usually it's a recruiter referring a resume to me, either from somebody who applied to a position or some resume that they found on a job board. So if you have an interest in a position, it's always best to apply, because I'm not going to consume a LinkedIn profile and match it very well just from the eyesight. So if you do have an interest in a position, it's always best to apply, and that way for sure you'll be hearing from the recruiter or from me or from both of us.
Correct. That's why I probably should elaborate a little bit more there. So with that, I'm going to kick it over to the questions. So Vladimir, his first question was, any advice to candidates coming from a non-cyber background? So he has a Security Plus cert, but very little actual IT background. What say you to actually trying to get into that cybersecurity field?
Yeah, it's a big challenge. We run into a lot of candidates in that that situation. First of all, commend anybody who gets a certification. That's certainly a good first step and a necessary first step for most cyber related positions. Another opportunity would be internships. If you have an interest in that, that way you can get some experience without having to and that experience, whether it be a official position or not, internships do help. And then the third thing is, if sometimes we've seen that we might be able to sacrifice lack of experience. If somebody has a degree, that might count for some experience, in terms of equivalency. So if you get a degree, which again, it's not easy to do, but if you're having trouble getting some experience, getting a degree sometimes can count for 2 years of experience, and that can lead to an opportunity. We recently onboarded an employee who had some great experience working through his degree in cybersecurity, and did some things that were very relevant to the work that we needed to have done. So because he had that experience in his degree program, it counted, from our perspective, in terms of his work experience, and that worked out worked out mutually for the candidate and for us. So internships, a degree, which kind of gives you an equivalency of experience. I think those are some good opportunities. And then, other than that, if you're inclined, doing some work at home, sometimes, if you build your own network at home, and again, that has some expense to it, but if you do some of those things, that can also, kind of help and count toward that.
So I had Chris DeLeon. He actually asked about a very specific job. I'm not sure exactly if you could elaborate on it or not. But it's a leadership development program internship, and it's out of Dallas, Texas.
Yeah, and that was on the AT&T job board. Is that right?
Yes, sir. It is. Yep.
Yeah. So there's a number of locations that we have. Dallas, obviously, a big one. That's where the AT&T corporate is. But you can also usually see opportunities for cyber internship in Bedminster, New Jersey, Indianapolis, Indiana, and then Denver, Colorado. There might be some others, but those four usually are most prominent. I highly recommend, if that's of interest, to apply to that. And there's also, when you go on the site, you might see some other, I think it talks about college students who are looking for a summer internship program, and that's actually a little bit of a unique opportunity. But when I talked to a manager at the Bedminster, New Jersey office, they indicated that they had 13 interns this past summer doing cyber work. And so Bedminster, I think I would probably put at the top of the list. But if you can get to Dallas, doors can open up there as well. I don't know if they have as many internships as Bedminster, but they probably do have at least a good handful of those. But yeah, I do recommend applying to them. And if location is not a challenge, I would recommend applying to all of them just to see if you can get into one, because some have more opportunities than others.
Correct. And again, that's a big piece that I think a lot of viewers have have that issue is sometimes it's that location, like they're only in this one area, they can only travel maybe an hour and a half outside that zone, and there's very unique job structure in that area. So sometimes it's that whole have to pick up and move for certain jobs that people have to weigh in when they do actually start applying for positions that are outside that scope.
Yep, and that's understood. And I would say if you're able and willing to be mobile, you have a lot more opportunities than if you're not. But it just kind of depends on where you're at and what location is a preference for you. Sometimes the investment of temporarily relocating, maybe to live in an extended stay place, around Bedminster or Dallas, it can open up some doors, later on that might, definitely return on that investment. So, but yes, that's an understood challenge, and I feel, depending on where you're at, I'd feel for you if there's not an opportunity there. But don't give up. I mean, I mentioned those four. There might be opportunities in other locations that I'm not aware of off the top, but you might see on the job board for internships, and take advantage of applying for every location that is of interest to you.
Correct. And so the next one I have, so Vlad actually asked again. He said, "What about a candidate's GitHub? Is that ever even looked at by a recruiter, at least from AT&T's perspective?" Kind of a GitHub to kind of link them to that experience. They're posting about different programs and things that they're working on and experimenting with. They're actually trying to show some type of experience. It's just not actually at a job.
Yeah. Well, I would, I'd kind of put it on a resume, in terms of something that you're pursuing. That always helps. But I mean, any posting or discussions or anything you do online that demonstrates, a pursuit in the cyber field is always helpful. It doesn't necessarily always catch every recruiter's attention if it's not, working for some company from this year to that year. But if we're looking for an entry-level opportunity, sometimes those recruiters, expand their horizons a bit. And if they see that and they refer that candidate to me, and I see that there's demonstrated interest in cyber, pursuing things personally, that can make the difference.
So Chris asked again about the whole resume piece. So I think we kind of hit on that a little bit earlier in the conversation. Should you actually list out relevant classes? So say it's a Linux class, a penetration test, or something that helped you pursue CH, even if you don't have it yet. Should you actually list out some of those courses as a description inside that resume, or even the LinkedIn profile?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there's probably a lot of debate about some of that. You might hear a different perspective from recruiters and hiring managers. What I have found useful, because sometimes we have a very specific niche opportunity, that I recommend, those four things kind of top of the fold. But if you have training like that, it never hurts to include at the end of the resume, because sometimes that'll come up in a search. I won't say the specific vendor name, but one time we were looking for a very specific experience about a specific vendor name, and it popped up that they had been to a specific vendor name training, and then we reached out to that candidate. So I would say, yeah, I would include that. I would probably make it relevant, obviously, to the position that you might be applying to, if you're applying. But otherwise, if you're just posting out on a general, resume board, yeah, I would include that at the end. And anything that's relevant to the kind of work you're looking for, I would include that. And what I would kind of recommend is, include that you completed it. When you completed it, the dates are helpful. And then, if you're pursuing a certification as a result, or pursuing something else as a result, that's always good. I would put a target date when you expect to complete that next thing, that follow-on activity. But yes, I think it's worth including. Again, this is my personal, opinion. I've found good matches with candidates because of some training they've had, and they've included it sometimes at the bottom, their resume, at the very end, listed training courses, and search, how to match.
Awesome. And I think that's a key note to take away from this, is that you have to include your experiences, your knowledge, your training, things like that. So if you're missing certain keywords, that recruiter might have not even pick up on it. So the next one is, Vlad asks, is there a way you can get actual demo time with the cybersecurity team? I guess he's more like almost like an internship kind of with the actual cybersecurity team. Does that ever happen? I'm not sure exactly where he was going with that question.
Yeah, well, I'll give you a couple inputs, and then we can do a follow-up. So, sometimes there's things called hackathons or a bug bounty kind of competitions. If that's somebody's interest, I would highly recommend participating in that. Sometimes, the winning teams become, highly sought after candidates, regardless of other experience, if they come in and win a competition like that. So while engagement directly with a cybersecurity team for a company is probably unlikely, in terms of work that team's doing, sometimes they'll put on, competitions like that, and they're evaluating, their performers. And if that's of, an angle of interest and the specialty and some skill set, that can be a great opportunity to find future employment.
Okay. So BT, he made a comment. So kind of, I guess it's at a certain level, if you're trying to merge into the cybersecurity field from another field, I guess you're kind of waiting, you kind of want a certain salary, things like that. So going into internship or a junior level isn't kind of very doable, I guess, with that. So if someone has a bachelor's, security plus, A plus, things like that, what could they do to set themselves apart? Say they're trying to get into a managerial role, things like that, if they've already been doing that with the other field.
Yeah, and I certainly welcome a follow up if I don't hit this as expected. But one of the things that we've found, and we do have employees that do this, is they'll do some cyber analyst or other IT jobs at night, and then work another job during the day. So they'll do a part-time thing at night, excuse me, or maybe do a swing shift, and then they'll work go to school during the day. Some of that can be helpful if you're willing to do that. That gives you some extra experience and helps kind of supplement the income. But I think if you're looking for a managerial position, I think there's certainly an expectation that most jobs require a degree, a managerial certification. So that would be something when we talk about the DoD 8570 certifications, anything IAM as opposed to IAT. So I would kind of highly encourage you to think about IAM related. And then And then if, at that point, it's just a matter of getting some managerial experience, whether it's cyber related or not. I would kind of encourage people to take advantage of that opportunity because that can make a difference. That can be of interest. But I would focus on the degree and something that's IAM related on the cert side.
Exactly. And so my next question I have, so Chris Dellon asked it again. Do you know of any time or any future hackathons, CTFs, or anything cybersecurity related that are being pushed out for AT&T at this moment?
I don't. That's a great question. We have an engagement next week. Actually, it's on the 19th, and that's a question I can ask. Then I'll try to ask before, and if anything that I see, I'll post it out on LinkedIn so you have that visibility. But I'll have a session with someone who's probably in the know on the 19th. In the meantime, anything I find out, I'll post it. If not, sometime after the 19th, after that engagement. But I'm not aware of it right now. But don't limit it to any just AT&T hosted competition. I would really highly encourage anybody to do whatever competition might be local to you and advantageous for you to participate in, if that's of interest. And then again, as soon as that thing is over, if you were successful with your team or if it was individual, get that on your resume and put that on LinkedIn. And and a picture sometimes is worth 1,000 words. And if there's any kind of trophy, medal, or something that can be impactful. So, but yeah, anything I find in that research, I will post on LinkedIn.
Awesome. So my next question, and this is probably one that you'll probably hear a lot about, are there any current remote opportunities, or do you ever see any in the cybersecurity sector for AT&T?
So working remotely, from home?
Yep.
Yeah, certainly there are some. And they probably won't be advertised that way, but there are some, and a lot of it is related to cybersecurity in terms of vulnerability, assessments, vulnerability management, some penetration testing related activities. So yeah, a lot of those can be remote. A lot of times, some of those have to be remote, actually, or intentionally remote. And I would say of the opportunities, though, it's probably around 10%. That's probably even a little bit high, actually. But there are some, and again, you won't read it stated that way in a job description. But sometimes, the way you might read it is, it might sound like there's a lot of traveling. And maybe there is, but also it might be a lot of remote work. And so, but there are some jobs that'll say it. So it's always good to search for that word in a job description because it could maybe put it that way. And usually what it'll say is virtual office. So you want to look for remote or virtual or something, in that category. But yeah, look for, now virtual will come up a lot, a lot of searches, but just kind of be patient with it and look for virtual office, virtual locations, virtual work. But yeah, there are some, and they usually, what they do though is they'll fill them from an internal employee who's been, working at a site and performing well, and then gets the opportunity to go do some virtual work. But it's not exclusively to that, but that's usually, yes. There are, and so overseas right now, while you might not see it posted on our job board, there's always a potential for an opportunity in Hawaii. There's always a potential for an opportunity in Germany, particularly Stuttgart, Germany, which is what I like to call the center of Western Europe. So if you like to travel, that's probably an ideal place to be. But there usually are. There are probably not too many posted. And one of the things that I'll kind of clue everybody in terms of AT&T's postings is we usually won't, like the location might say something else, like maybe Bedminster, New Jersey, or San Antonio, Texas, or Washington, D.C. But somewhere in the description, it'll probably indicate where that location is, and it'll say an overseas location, but it might not say that in the title. So what I would recommend is, if you're interested in overseas positions, I would apply to a cyber analyst position, if that's your interest, cyber analyst, because that's usually what we have overseas. Apply to another cyber analyst position that we have, and maybe in your resume, make sure other locations are of interest, in particular Germany, Hawaii, other places where we have, U.S. presence. I'll say either Department of Defense, Department of State, and kind of, again, like I said, include that in your resume. But sometimes you have to apply to a U.S. based position, and then just kind of mention, hey, I'm interested in overseas, if you have any of those opportunities as well. Some hiring managers don't have U.S. and overseas, but many of us who do, we're always interested if we're interviewing a candidate or we find a resume and it might say, I'm applying for this position, but I'm willing to do work overseas, Germany or Hawaii. We're usually going to call that person pretty quickly.
All right, so I have two last questions, and then we'll wrap it up. So, Mr. Keene, one of them was what are some security tools that AT&T is currently looking for, to have experience with, if someone's actually trying to pursue a job with AT&T?
Well, yeah, that's a good question, and it would be probably inappropriate for me to mention vendor names.
Okay. That's fine.
So, but that doesn't mean so. We at AT&T, we're looking to virtualize almost every vendor product that can be useful in an enterprise. But I'll give you five types of capabilities. Again, not mentioning vendor names, but firewall awareness, probably pretty important. Understanding firewalls. What I'll call a SIM, or Security Information Event Manager, or a Security Event Information Manager, however you want to spell SIM. That's probably number two. Probably, trying to think of the name I'll give to this, but there's a particular product that's the most popular these days. It's not so much SIM, but I would say scripting. There's certain scripting capabilities out there, and those can be helpful. Usually there's always a position that we're trying to fill, it seems like, that has some scripting experience in it. And then probably, routers, always good to understand how those work, as well as web content filtering, and then intrusion detection, intrusion prevention. And then, the only other thing, this is antivirus, how that works is always helpful. But again, from an enterprise perspective, I think those are some categories I would kind of throw out there. Some of that you can find open source and play with at home.
And again, that's the key term there, is that there are items out there that are able to be found. So the next question I had was, I'll take it exactly how you said it. Would an associate's degree with a focus on cybersecurity, along with certifications he has, Security Plus and PCI, be something you would consider for opportunities?
Yeah, there are some opportunities where that can be a match. What I have found, though, generally speaking, preponderance, associate's degrees, if it's in cybersecurity, are of interest, but usually if it requires a degree, it's usually bachelor's. So, but there are some times when associates will be sufficient. And not to minimize it, I encourage anybody to get associates, because sometimes you get more technical insight from an associate's degree than you would from a bachelor's, and that's really what we're looking for in terms of the skill sets. But Yeah, there are some opportunities out there with associate's degrees. I would say, Security Plus is a good start. I do recommend, people consider, uh, looking at some other getting that, but kind of combining it with another certification in a different category. Another one I would recommend that's a good follow-on to Security Plus is a thing called CYSA Plus, and that's also CompTIA, and that's a good follow-on. And then there's another one after that. It's a penetration testing. Those three, if you kind of want to stay a good, and in terms of generalist and be able to align to a lot of positions, getting those two or three of those certifications is really helpful. Obviously, CISSP is the most desired. So if you want to focus and consolidate, I would recommend that one. But otherwise, getting a variety can be helpful. Sometimes certain positions you have to have two different ones, an IAT cert as well as a CSSP, or the other one is a infrastructure. I'm sure recruiters might admit too that we don't spend a lot of time necessarily looking through profiles all the time to find candidates. Sometimes we do. Sometimes that's very specific to location. So, we're looking for a location in terms of people's profiles, sometimes more than others. And if there's a location match, then we go into some other details of the profile. But usually at that point, what a recruiter will do will connect or seek to connect with the candidate and then look to get a resume. So, sometimes LinkedIn is good to connect, but it's not necessarily how we're reviewing candidates' experiences and skill sets. And the last thing is I would just take advantage as much as you can of free opportunities, open source, online things. Certifications are good. Experience is obviously helpful. Degrees these days, especially if it's cybersecurity degrees, people, hiring managers, recruiters are grabbing those candidates, usually the first, of all of them. Which again, some of that's investment that's required. So take advantage of the free opportunities, and then I would just say pursue the field. Read up on it, be an expert on what's in the news, understand the things that are in the news, what implications those have in terms of cyber-related attacks, cyber-related capabilities, and engage with those people on LinkedIn that seem to be experts in that field that are posting things. Read their articles, comment on them. I think that demonstrates a lot of commitment, to the field, to when recruiters and hiring managers look at your profile and your resume. So again, thank you for the opportunity. I certainly appreciate the interest, and we'll look to keep connecting with folks on LinkedIn and look for opportunities to match candidates with employment opportunities.
And again, thank you, Mr. Keene. His details are below this video feed and also on the LinkedIn post, or you can message me through LinkedIn if you need any of that information. So thank you again, Mr. Keene, for giving you this time and elaborating on open positions and kind of key elements that job seekers should look at for applying when they do apply for positions.
Yep. Thank you, Justin.
So thank you for tuning in to Cybersecurity Connection, where we connect you to a new cybersecurity focused on cybersecurity each and every night. Link to the job, website, and contact information is below. See you again tomorrow night.